the irreducible foundation of leadership. First principles analysis of this leadership conglomerate reveals that successful leadership is not a set of external skills, but an internal operating system built upon a bedrock of self-awareness and accountability. All great leaders, from Navy SEALs and tech CEOs to historical figures and coaches, operate from the same four non-negotiable, interconnected truths. The long-tail connection across these texts is the shift from transactional leadership, what I do, to transformational leadership, who I am. This synthesis strips away specific tactics and organizational jargon to reveal the four universal, foundational principles. The principle of inner clarity, the North Star. The principle of conscious vulnerability, the brave heart. The principle of radical accountability, the extreme owner. The principle of frictionless movement, the enabling architect. The principle of inner clarity, the North Star, the irreducible truth. Leadership flows from a deeply understood why and who. The foundational principle of all effective leadership is the necessity of absolute clarity regarding purpose and self. Before a leader can move a single person or a complex organization, they must know their own true north and the mission's why. Synthesis of foundational concepts, the primacy of purpose. Start with why, true north, the infinite game. Sinek, George, and others established the irreducible truth that people are not inspired by what a team does, but by why it does it. This clarity of purpose serves as the magnetic center, the North Star, that attracts the right tribes, and defines the infinite goal, the infinite game. Self-deception is the enemy. Leadership and self-deception, lead yourself first. The most critical barrier to clarity is the leader's own mind. The Arbinger Institute's work, along with Kethledge and Irwin's focus on solitude, highlights that the first principle of internal failure is the inability to see oneself accurately and acknowledge one's own role in problems. Conscious leadership. Great leaders must actively seek moments of solitude to reflect and overcome the inward mindset. The emotional core, primal leadership, the emotionally intelligent leader. Goleman's work proves that a leader's mood is contagious. The primal effect. A leader must have the emotional self-awareness to manage their own internal state, as their emotional tone immediately sets the cultural tone for the organization. Leadership starts by acting like a leader, and then thinking like one. Act like a leader, think like a leader. Conclusion. The leader's internal commitment must be made before any external action. Success is unsustainable unless the soul, heart, and mind, leading through, are activated by a pure and uncorrupted source of purpose. The principle of conscious vulnerability, the brave heart. The irreducible truth. Trust is the currency of leadership, and it is purchased with emotional exposure. This principle links the internal clarity of the leader to the trust of the team. The entire conglomerate, especially the human-focused texts, converges on the idea that the heart of effective leadership is the capacity to be human and allow others to see that humanity. Synthesis of foundational concepts. Vulnerability is the new strength. Dare to lead, leaders eat last. Brown's work establishes the principle that courage is vulnerability in action. A leader cannot ask a team to take risks, innovate, or have tough conversations if they are not willing to model the emotional exposure involved. Sinek complements this by insisting on creating a circle of safety where the leader assumes the risk first, eats last, allowing the team to feel safe enough to trust and collaborate. The power of connection. Hearts touched with fire. The power of positive leadership. Leadership is fundamentally an affair of the heart. The strongest teams are those where the leader's focus is on building positive relationships, positive leadership, and inspiring belief, the leadership challenge. This requires the leader to be touched with fire, to have empathy and passion, not just competence. Leading from humanity, conscious leadership, good leaders ask great questions. This principle mandates that leaders drop the facade of needing to be right or perfect, commitment to truth. Instead, they engage in radical curiosity by asking great questions. The coaching habit, good leaders ask great questions. This act of asking rather than telling not only decentralizes intelligence, but demonstrates a vulnerable humility necessary for growth. Conclusion. The greatest competitive advantage is not a patent or a product, but a culture of psychological safety. That safety is exclusively built when the leader, through brave work and whole hearts, dare to lead, is willing to lead with humility, not ego. The principle of radical accountability, the extreme owner, the irreducible truth. Outcome is the leader's sole measure, and blame is the ultimate failure of competence. This principle directly links the individual's commitment to the team's operational success. It is the unyielding law that responsibility extends infinitely upward, regardless of circumstance. Synthesis of foundational concepts. Absolute responsibility, extreme ownership, the dichotomy of leadership. Willink and Babin present the military's irreducible law. There are no bad teams, only bad leaders. Any error, resource failure, or communication breakdown is ultimately the leader's fault, because they failed to train, clarify, or prepare adequately. This creates the paradox of leadership. The leader must balance radical decentralization with full ownership of the result. The power of focus. Good to great lean in. Effective leadership requires making hard choices to prioritize the vital few. Collins's hedgehog concept and Sandberg's call to lean in both demand a focused, aggressive mindset. The accountable leader doesn't take on everything. They identify the core strengths, strengths-based leadership, and concentrate energy on becoming the best in that domain. Leading the transition, leading change, the practice of adaptive leadership. Accountability is most tested during change. Kotter's model and Heifetz's adaptive leadership demand that the leader accept responsibility for the chaos of the transition. The leader must aggressively and decisively execute the change plan while owning the emotional and organizational friction it creates. Conclusion. The final output of the leader's clarity and vulnerability is a team that executes. The moment a leader blames an external factor, they surrender the power to solve the problem. Radical accountability is the mechanism for reclaiming that power and driving the organization toward its ultimate true north. The principle of frictionless movement, the enabling architect. The irreducible truth. The leader's job is not to do the work, but to design the system that makes the right work easy. The final principle addresses the leader's external function, creating an operational environment where the team can execute the mission with minimum unnecessary strain. The leader shifts from being the doer to the architect. Synthesis of foundational concepts. Design for execution. The friction project. The making of a manager. Sutton and Rao articulate the irreducible managerial truth. Friction is the enemy of action. The leader's primary role is to act as the enabling architect, designing systems that reduce unnecessary burdens, wrong things harder, and make essential tasks simpler, right things easier. Jocko frames this as the fundamental managerial shift, facilitating, not starring. The language of success. Leadership is language, the coaching habit. Effective execution is a function of precise communication. Marquet's work stresses that the leader's language must shift from tell to ask. The coaching model mandates that leaders say less, ask more, to delegate decision-making and build competency across the team. This reinforces decentralized command from extreme ownership. The exemplary model, the leadership challenge, learning leadership. Kauzes and Posner identify the core behaviors that enable others, primarily, model the way. The leader creates frictionless movement by establishing clear values and modeling the exact behavior they expect. John Wooden's principles provide the ultimate example of this. Relentless focus on fundamental execution, built on the foundation of character. The leverage point, leverage leadership 2.0. This concept, often applied in organizational development, highlights that a leader should focus their time and energy on the areas that yield the highest return, e.g., coaching, talent management, planning. The effective leader does not spread their effort thin, but leverages their authority to clear the path for their team's success. Conclusion: the ultimate demonstration of leadership is a team that functions effectively even in the leader's absence. This is achieved by mastering the dichotomy of being highly visible to set the example, yet highly focused on the system, the organizational architecture, to ensure the path to victory is clear, simple, and repeatable. The principle of strength-based influence, the builder. The irreducible truth. Leadership is the deliberate act of amplifying the potential and autonomy of others, not oneself. This principle distills the essence of leadership from the self-focused, inner clarity, vulnerability, and the problem-focused, accountability, frictionless movement into the people-focused. It is the recognition that a leader's true power is measured by the capability and independence of their team. Synthesis of foundational concepts. The follower's prerequisite. Strengths-based leadership, the leadership challenge. Wrath and Conchis. Work establishes the foundation. People follow leaders who offer 4 core needs: trust, compassion, stability, and hope. The leader must be the catalyst for the team's hope. Causes and Posner emphasize that exemplary leaders inspire a shared vision and enable others to act, showing that the follower's belief is the ultimate metric of influence. The power of asking, the coaching habit. Good leaders ask great questions. This principle mandates that the leader's primary tool is not instruction, but interrogation, in the sense of thoughtful inquiry. By adopting the coaching habit of saying less and asking more, the leader consciously shifts responsibility and authority to the team member. This forces the employee to become the owner of the solution, extreme ownership, thereby building competence and autonomy, creating high performance, good to great, leverage leadership 2.0. The enduring success identified by Collins is characterized by leaders who focus on first who then what, getting the right people on the bus. The practical application of this is seen in leverage leadership, where the leader's job is not to deliver the training, but to design the training system and manage talent to ensure the right person is in the right seat. This is the ultimate expression of the leader enabling action rather than generating it. Leading to independence, the making of a manager. The successful transition from individual contributor to manager requires recognizing that the goal is not team dependence, but team independence. Julie Zhuo stresses that the highest value a manager can deliver is moving their reports toward self-sufficiency and empowering them to find their own solutions. This directly feeds the decentralized command structure found in the military texts. Conclusion: the leader's true task is to be the organizational architect and confidence builder. By identifying the unique strengths of their people and asking the questions that force them to grow, the leader creates a self-sustaining organism that can execute the mission autonomously. The ultimate success is when the team no longer needs the leader for tactical decisions. The principle of historical perspective, the long game. The irreducible truth. Effective leadership requires the strategic wisdom to separate permanent principles from temporary crisis. The final principle elevates the discussion from day-to-day operations to strategic endurance. It synthesizes the lessons from historical study in turbulent times, reinforcing that great leadership transcends specific business cycles or technological eras. Synthesis of foundational concepts. The crisis test. Leadership in turbulent times. Hearts touched with fire. Goodwin's study of presidents like Lincoln and Roosevelt provides the irreducible truth that a leader's character is forged in crisis, not convenience. The strategic wisdom required to navigate turbulent times is not about implementing new tactics, but about anchoring the organization to the true north, Principle 1, and displaying unwavering resolve, the will to overcome, from the Willink Babin texts. The need for solitude, lead yourself first, leadership, 6 studies in world strategy. The ability to lead with clarity in chaos requires the discipline of solitude, the time dedicated to rigorous, unhurried thought. Kethledge and Irwin assert that solitude creates the mental space to move from reactive tactical thinking to proactive strategic thought, enabling the leader to see the long-tail consequences of current actions. Kissinger's studies show that world strategists succeed by synthesizing vast information and choosing paths not immediately obvious. The infinite mindset, the infinite game, leading change. Sinek's concept of the infinite game provides the ultimate strategic perspective. Leadership is not about winning a quarter or a competitor. It is about enduring and ensuring the organization remains vital and relevant across generations. This view demands that the leader adopt the default, aggressive mindset, extreme ownership, not toward competitors, but toward solving internal problems and continually adapting the system, leading change. The cycle of growth, the journey of leadership. The McKinsey study on CEO development and the historical biographies confirm that leadership is not an arrival point, but a continuous journey of internal transformation. The lessons learned are rarely new technical skills, but deeper understandings of self, context, and people. The leader is forever accountable for their own continuous learning and self-improvement. Conclusion. The truly adaptive leader understands that change is the only constant. Their wisdom is the product of disciplined reflection and historical perspective, allowing them to focus on the timeless principles of character, clarity, and trust, while viewing market chaos and immediate crises as merely temporary challenges to be navigated. The successful leader plays the long game, ensuring the values and purpose endure far beyond any single mission or leader. The principle of cultural architecture, the legacy builder. The irreducible truth. The leader's greatest output is a self-sustaining, ethical culture, not immediate profit or personal fame. This principle moves beyond individual performance and team function to address the leader's lasting legacy. It synthesizes the organizational and ethical requirements necessary to ensure the company's survival and positive impact over time, long after the founder or leader has moved on. Synthesis of foundational concepts. The primacy of character. True. North hearts touched with fire, the soul of leadership. The collective wisdom confirms that a strong culture is built on the leader's authentic character. Bill George's focus on True North insists that sustained success comes from leading in alignment with one's deepest values. Deepak Chopra and David Gergen reinforce this by highlighting the need for leaders to lead with soul and heart, grounding the organization in moral and ethical integrity. A failure of character is a guaranteed cultural failure. The ethical boundary. Lean in. Good to great. While these texts focus on different objectives, gender equity versus corporate transformation, they share the irreducible principle of setting a non-negotiable ethical boundary. Sheryl Sandberg's work, while focused on women in leadership, broadly demands that leaders create environments of fairness and inclusion. Jim Collins's Level 5. Leaders are defined not just by fierce professional will, but by personal humility, a dedication to the company's success above their own ego, which is the ultimate ethical safeguard. The culture of continuous learning. Learning leadership, the leadership challenge. A healthy culture is one that embraces growth and adaptation. Kouzes and Posner emphasize that leaders challenge the process and foster an environment where experimentation and learning from failure are encouraged. This directly contrasts with the fear-based cultures that punish mistakes, which stifles the brave work necessary for adaptation. Dare to lead. The leader must actively design a culture that prioritizes self-development over stagnation. Creating high-road leadership. High-road leadership. Leadership is language. John Maxwell and L. David Marquet stress that the culture is defined by the quality of discourse and interaction. High-road leaders actively seek to bring people together and unify effort. High-road leadership. Marquet shows that the language used, e.g. asking "what do you see" instead of "what should we do," shifts the organizational default from a fear-based, top-down structure to an empowered, collaborative one, thereby building an enduring, strong culture. Conclusion. The leader's ultimate contribution is not the quarterly numbers, but the organizational soul, the ethical, resilient, and adaptive framework that perpetuates the mission. By intentionally acting as the cultural architect, the leader ensures that the principles of inner clarity, accountability, and vulnerability are internalized by every member of the tribes, guaranteeing a legacy of sustained relevance. The synthesis, the unbreakable loop of leadership, the irreducible integration of the 8 principles. The synthesis of this entire conglomerate of leadership wisdom reveals that the principles do not stand alone. They form a single, continuous, and unbreakable feedback loop, an operational framework for the human being who leads. The loop of leadership starts with the self, inner clarity. The leader retreats to solitude to confirm their true north and conquer the inward mindset, finding the courage, dare to lead, to be honest. Generates trust, conscious vulnerability. This clarity allows the leader to create the circle of safety. Leaders eat last. By showing humility and asking great questions, they inspire hope and trust in the team. Drives execution, radical accountability. The trust built in the previous step grants the leader the moral authority to demand extreme ownership for all outcomes. This forces the team to execute the mission by maintaining the default, aggressive mindset against problems. Enables action, frictionless movement. The leader acts as the enabling architect, using discipline equals freedom to design systems, protocols, clear language that simplify execution and focus energy on high-leverage activities. Builds people, strength-based influence. The leader deliberately uses coaching and asking to push autonomy down, decentralized command, forcing team members to develop their own strengths and own their solutions, thus moving them toward independence. Sustains vision, historical perspective. The entire process is grounded in the wisdom gained from reflection and the commitment to playing the infinite game, always adapting, but never abandoning the core purpose. Establishes endurance, cultural architecture. The result of the functioning loop is an ethical, resilient, and enduring culture that will maintain the mission's integrity and its people's development long after the current leaders are gone. Conclusion. This unified philosophy, born from the synthesis of military discipline, emotional intelligence, and business strategy, is the ultimate playbook for the entrepreneur. It confirms that leadership is not a career stage or a title, but a continuous loop of self-improvement and selfless service. A relentless cycle of taking ownership, fostering competence, and building a system that can succeed indefinitely. The leader is the anchor in the storm and the architect of the future.